Hi everyone, I'm Jieyi from Susan's family. Today I'd like to introduce the Jieyi sweater. For this electronic tutorial, search for sousoudiy.com on the website and check it out. This sweater is made up of the main part and decorative accessories. The main part includes the front piece and the back piece. The sleeves, the hem, and the collar. The decorative accessories include 2 types of buttons. First, complete the knitting of the main part before sewing on the accessories. Since everyone's tension is different, the size of the fabric pieces may also vary. Before starting the actual knitting, you need to knit a gauge sample. Measure your tension. There is a separate video tutorial for knitting the gauge sample. For detailed charts, please refer to the diagram. After completing the measurement, adjust according to the video instructions before starting to knit. Pay attention, after finishing the gauge sample, don't cut the yarn. The yarn can be reused. After measuring and adjusting, you can unravel the sample. This sweater comes in 2 sizes. The knitting methods for different sizes are roughly the same. Only the stitch count and row count differ. Here, I will explain using the small size as an example. Let's take a look at the front piece. The front piece is divided into 4 sections. Among them, Section 1, Section 2, Section 3 are knitted from bottom upwards. Section 4 is knitted from top downwards. Let's first learn the knitting method for Section 1. Section 1 consists of 2 fabric pieces. Start by knitting piece 1. Let's look at the chart. The blank squares in the chart represent knit stitches. The piece is worked back and forth. On the wrong side, you'll need to work in a method of knitting for the purl stitches and purling for the knit stitches. Please watch as I demonstrate the specific knitting method. First, cast on. Here, I'm using the crochet hook provisional cast on method. To make it easier for everyone to see clearly, I'll demonstrate with cotton yarn. For specific yarn color schemes and needle sizes, please refer to the detail page of our product and the paper instructions. First, we take a piece of waste yarn. The waste yarn can be slightly thicker than the actual yarn we will use for knitting. Get the crochet hook that corresponds to the yarn you'll be using. Let's first make the chain stitches. Here, we need more chains than the actual starting number of stitches by about 4. This is to ensure there's enough chain when casting on. Let's start by casting on. After completing the cast on, begin crocheting the chain stitches. Each chain counts as 1 stitch. Refer to our chart. Here, the number of chains we crochet should be about 4 more than the required stitches for knitting. Repeat this process all the way down to finish the chain. After completing the chain cast on, crochet 1 more chain stitch. Stretch and tighten this chain stitch. Cut off the yarn tail. Let's take a look at this chain we've made. On the right side, there are V-shaped loops. On the wrong side, there are raised back ridge. Later, we will pick up stitches from these back ridge to work row 1. This is also known as picking up stitches instead of casting on. Take out the circular needle and the main yarn for knitting. Here, I'm using random colors. Place the yarn aside for later use. On the wrong side, find a back ridge closer to the right side. Insert the hook. Leave about 10 centimeters of yarn. Place it on the right needle. Take the yarn and pick up a loop from the back ridge of the chain. The first loop you pick up is the first stitch. Next, pick up stitches one by one from the back ridge on the left side. Pick them up in a knit stitch manner. The second stitch. The third stitch. The fourth stitch. And the fifth stitch. Following this method, pick up the required number of stitches. Refer to your specific chart for the exact stitch count. Don't make the starting stitches too tight. Complete the casting on by following this method. This completes the process of picking up stitches. Our provisional cast on is also completed. The cast on here counts as one row. That means the first row is already completed. Pay attention to the size differences. The stitch count is different here. Make sure to check your chart while knitting. Here, we picked up a row knitwise. This is equivalent to knitting the first row in knit stitches. Next, flip to the wrong side to knit the second row. The second row is knitted on the wrong side. You need to work in a method of knitting for the purl stitches, and purling for the knit stitches. That means purling all stitches. Follow this method to complete the row. This completes the knitting of the second row. You can tighten the yarn tail from the cast on. Next, flip to the right side to knit the third row. The third row is knitted on the right side. Knit all corresponding stitches. That means knitting all stitches. Follow this method to complete the row. This completes the knitting of the third row. Continue knitting the fourth row. The fourth row is knitted on the wrong side. It's done in the same way as the second row. Purl all stitches. Everyone, refer to the chart. Refer to the previous demonstration to finish it. Now my sample has completed the fourth row. Next, let's knit the fifth row. This row needs to start the small pattern. Our small pattern consists of 4 stitches and 4 rows. Here we need to knit the first row of the small pattern. Refer to the chart, knit the first stitch. Next, knit one group of the small pattern. For the next 2 stitches, it's a 1/1 LC stitch. Here we need to use a cable needle. Take a cable needle that is about the same size as the knitting needle you are using. Move the next loop on the left needle to the cable needle, keeping it at the front of the workpiece. On the left needle, knit the next loop as a knit stitch. After completing this, knit the loop on the cable needle as well. The 1/1 LC stitch is now done. The next 2 stitches form a 1/1 RC stitch. Use the cable needle to thread the next loop onto it, holding it at the back of the workpiece. On the left needle, knit the next loop as a knit stitch. After completing this, knit the loop on the cable needle as well. This way, the 1/1 RC stitch is now completed. Continue by following the chart to knit the corresponding number of knit stitches. You can refer to the chart for the stitch count here. After completing the corresponding number of knit stitches, we will move on to knitting the first row of the second small pattern. Start with a 1/1 LC stitch. After finishing that, knit another 1/1 RC stitch. This completes the first row of the second small pattern. Repeat this process. Knit the first row of the small pattern once after a certain interval of knit stitches. The number of stitches for the interval can be referenced from the chart. Follow this method, continuing until you finish the last small pattern in this row. For the last small pattern, after completing it, knit all remaining loops on the needle as knit stitches. This completes the 5th row. Now my sample swatch has completed rows 6 through 8. Let's take a look at rows 6 and 8. Like all wrong side rows, they are worked entirely in purl stitches. The technique for row 7 is similar to row 5. When you reach the 4 small pattern stitches, On row 7, start by working 1/1/1 RC stitch. Then work 1/1/1 LC stitch. For the rest of the section, the method is identical to row 5. You can work this part on your own. Next, let's take a look at the finished product. After completing row 8, continue with rows 9 through to the 5th last row. For this part, we will continue to follow the chart. Make sure to work the small patterns in the corresponding positions. You may notice that between the two small patterns horizontally, the number of stitches between them remains constant. Vertically, the number of rows between two small patterns also stays the same. It's just that after completing one group of small patterns, when you start again vertically, the position of the small patterns will shift to the space between the previous two small patterns. For this part, everyone can continue to refer to the chart and work the small patterns in the corresponding positions. On the right side, knit all stitches except for the small patterns. On the wrong side, purl all stitches. Repeat this process to finish this section. We'll work on the remaining part together later. Now continue with the 4th row from the last. Here, I'll switch to a stockinette swatch for demonstration. Please focus on the method here. The small patterns still need to be worked according to the chart. The stitch count, row count, and pattern on the swatch may differ from the actual piece. You can ignore this. On the 4th row from the last, you need to increase stitches on the right side of the fabric piece. Knit the first stitch. Then work a RLI stitch. Pass the right needle from back to front. Pick up the loop underneath the first loop on the left needle. Place it onto the left needle. Insert the right needle into this loop. Knit 1 stitch. Work another knit stitch in the loop. This way, you have increased 1 stitch on the right side of the previous loop. The RLI stitch is now completed. After finishing, continue to knit all the remaining loops. Follow this method and complete this row. This completes the 4th row from the last. Now move on to the 3rd row from the last. Work all stitches as purl stitches for this row. You can finish it yourself. After completing the 3rd row from the last, move on to the 2nd row from the last. The method for this row is identical to the 4th row from the last. Start with 1 knit stitch. Then work a RLI stitch. After that, knit all the remaining loops. Continue until the row is finished. This completes the 2nd row from the last. Now proceed to the final row. Work all stitches as purl stitches on the wrong side for the last row. You can finish knitting it on your own. After everything is completed, leave a yarn tail of about 10 centimeters. Then cut it off. Up to this point, the knitting method for piece 1 has been fully explained. Set it aside for later use. Start knitting piece 2 with another circular needle. Take a look at the pre-made piece. The only difference between piece 2 and piece 1 is the position of the small patterns. And for the last 4 rows, the increase happens on the left side. The rest of the knitting method is almost identical to piece 1. Everyone can refer to the chart and the demonstration for piece 1. Knit on your own until finishing the 5th row from the end. Later, we will knit the remaining part together. Now, My sample has completed piece 2. From the starting chain to the 5th row from the end, the stitch count, row count, and pattern of the sample are different from the actual project. You can ignore this, I won't mention it again going forward. Let's move on to the 4th row, from the end of piece 2. In this row, you need to increase on the left side of the piece. Start by knitting stitches. Continue until there are 2 loops left on the piece. When you reach the corresponding position, knit 1 LLI stitch. Work the next loop on the left needle as a knit stitch. Then insert the left needle into the loop from the row below the previous one of the stitch you just knitted. The loop on the needle belongs to this row. The one below it is from the row below the previous one. Pick it up with the left needle from back to front. Insert the right needle from front to back into this loop, and knit it. This way, you've increased a stitch on the left side of the previous stitch. That's the LLI stitch. After completing, knit the last stitch as a knit stitch. This way, the 4th to last row of piece 2 is completed. Continue with the 3rd to last row. We will work this row on the wrong side. Work all stitches as purl stitches. You can finish it yourself. After finishing the 3rd to last row, proceed to the 2nd to last row. The method for this row is the same as for the 4th to last row. Start with knit stitches. Continue until there are 2 loops left on the left needle. When you reach the corresponding position, work 1 LLI stitch first. Then knit 1 stitch. The 2nd to last row is now completed. Turn your work over, work the last row on the wrong side. The last row is also all purl stitches. After completing the last row of piece 2, there's no need to fasten off the yarn. You can finish it on your own. With this, the explanation for piece 2 is complete. The explanation for section 1 of the front piece is also fully done. Next, let's learn the technique for section 2. Take a look at the finished product. For section 2, you'll need to join the 2 pieces from section 1 together, and then work them as one. Piece 2 will be on the right, and piece 1 will be on the left. You still need to work the small patterns at the corresponding positions. For the smaller size in section 2, the last few rows require you to bind off stitches on both sides to form the armhole. The larger size does not require this. Please watch as I demonstrate the specific technique. Let's start by working the first row of section 2. I will continue to demonstrate with this stockinette stitch swatch. First, we'll work on piece 2. The method for this row is identical to the 4th row, from the end of section 1 on piece 2. Work in knit stitches until you have 2 stitches remaining. Then work 1 LLI stitch, and 1 knit stitch. You will finish this part on your own. Now I've already completed the first row of the part worked on piece 2. Next, we'll cast on 4 stitches. These will later be used to join piece 1. Here, we use the M1BL increase method. Place the yarn tail underneath your right index finger. Wrap it clockwise, in a circle. Then go from back to front. And place this loop onto the right needle. This is how you cast on 1 stitch. Continue. Make another circle, and place it onto the knitting needle. 2 stitches. Wrap and place on the needle. 3 stitches. 4 stitches. So we've used the M1BL increase method to cast on 4 stitches. Next, We'll work on the part of piece 1. Take out piece 1. Here, the method we use to work on piece 1 is the same as the 4th row from the end of the section 1 of piece 1. Start with a knit stitch. After completing this row, we need to tighten the yarn tail used for knitting, and the yarn tail, where piece 1 was broken off. This prevents large gaps at the joining point. Next, work a RLI stitch. After completing it, finish all remaining loops with knit stitches. This completes the first row of section 2. The two pieces are now joined. Next, work on the second row. This entire row will be worked in purl stitches. As you approach the area from the previous row, where the M1BL increase joins the two pieces, pay attention to tightening the yarn tail, where piece 1 was broken off. Continue with purl stitches. When working purl stitches over the M1BL increase, make sure not to stretch too far between the two needles. This prevents loose loops and keeps the work looking neat. Be careful and meticulous while working these 4 stitches. Once done, continue with purl stitches on piece 2. Keep going until you finish this row. This way, the second row is now completed. Next, continue working from the 3rd row to the 7th row from the last. For this part, refer to the chart, and work evenly upwards. After completing this, shape the armhole on both sides of the remaining 6 rows. Just follow the chart to complete this part on your own. Don't forget to work the small patterns at the corresponding positions. My swatch is already completed now, the 7th row from the last in section 2. Next, let's work the remaining 6 rows. For the smaller size, you need to shape the armhole on both sides. Pay attention, girls, who are knitting the larger size. There's no need to decrease for the armhole in section 2. You'll shape the armhole later at the beginning of section 3. You can first finish the remaining part by following the chart, but you still need to carefully watch the demonstration here. Let's start with the 6th row from the last. In this row, you need to decrease by binding off the corresponding number of stitches. Start with 1 knit stitch. Then work the second knit stitch. Pick up the previous stitch and cover it over. That's 1 stitch bound off. Continue with another knit stitch. Pick up the previous stitch and cover it over. That's the 2nd stitch bound off. Knit the 4th stitch. Pick up the previous stitch. Cover it over. 3 stitches have been bound off. You can see that the number of stitches we bound off here is determined by the action of picking up and covering over. The number of times you cover over equals the number of stitches bound off. This will be 1 stitch less than the number of knit stitches you worked, because on our right needle, there will always be 1 loop remaining. This loop is represented in the chart as the loop of the next stitch on the left needle. And when it is on the right needle, it is a stitch that has already been knitted. When you count your stitches while binding off, use the number of times you perform the pick up and cover over action as the standard. Make sure not to count wrong. Continue binding off. Bind off all the stitches indicated in the chart. That's how you complete the binding off process. Similarly, we can also count the number of bound off stitches by the number of braid created while binding off. The number of these horizontal braids equals the number of stitches bound off. When binding off here, make sure to check the stitch count carefully. Don't bind off too many or too few stitches. After finishing the bind off, refer to the chart next. And keep knitting until the end of this row. This completes the 6th row from the end. Then, turn to the wrong side to work on the 5th row from the end. Similarly, for this row, you'll need to start with binding off for the corresponding number of stitches. Here, we begin with one purl stitch first, followed by another purl stitch. Then pick up the previous stitch and pull it over. This binds off one stitch. Continue with another purl stitch. Pick up the previous stitch, and pull it over again. The number of stitches we bind off here is determined by how many times we perform the pick up and over motion. Make sure to check the stitch count while knitting. After binding off the corresponding stitches, continue with purl stitches. Keep knitting until there is one stitch left in this row. Leave the remaining stitch unworked for now. Use it in the next row for binding off. Follow this method to finish the rest of the row. When you reach the point where only one loop remains, the 5th to last row will be completed. Next, turn your work, and start the 4th to last row. In this row, you need to bind off 3 stitches first. Place the yarn tail underneath the needle. Slide over the first loop on the left needle purlwise. Pick up the previous stitch and let it pass over. That binds off one stitch. Next, knit one stitch. Pick up the previous stitch and let it pass over. Now 2 stitches are bound off. Continue with another knit stitch. Pick up the previous stitch. Let it pass over. Like this. 3 stitches are bound off. Then refer to the chart and continue knitting. For this row, leave 1 stitch unknitted as well. It will be used for binding off in the next row. This completes the 4th to last row. Next, turn your work, and knit the 3rd to last row. For this row, bind off 3 stitches first. Place the yarn tail above the fabric piece. Slip 1 stitch purlwise. Pick up the previous stitch with the left needle. Let it pass over. Bind off 1 stitch, then knit 1 purl stitch. Pick up the previous stitch and let it pass over. 2 stitches are bound off. Continue knitting 1 more purl stitch. Pick up the previous stitch. Let it pass over. After completion, continue purling stitches. Keep working until there is 1 loop left. The remaining loop will also be used for binding off in the next row. When you reach the corresponding position, the 3rd to last row will be completed. Continue knitting the remaining 2 rows. For the next 2 rows, both start by binding off 2 stitches at the beginning. Then refer to the chart and knit. Finally, leave 1 stitch unknitted. This stitch will be bound off in the next row. You can refer to our demonstration of the first 2 rows to knit these 2 rows. Everyone, follow the chart to complete these 2 rows. Up to this point, we have finished explaining section 2. Next, let's learn the knitting method for section 3. Let's take a look at the finished product. Section 3 needs to be divided into 2 pieces and knit separately. Start with piece 1 on the right side, then join yarn and knit piece 2 on the left side. Continue constructing the armhole on both sides. Below, please watch me demonstrate the specific knitting method. Next, knit row 1 of piece 1. First, divide all the loops on the piece evenly into 2 parts. On the needle between the middle 2 loops, place a stitch marker as a mark. When dividing the loops, pay attention. There is still 1 loop on the right needle at this moment. Don't forget to count it. Then start knitting. First, bind off the corresponding number of stitches. Refer to the chart for the specific stitch count. Then follow the chart and knit. Keep knitting until you reach the stitch right of the marker. Mindful that the bind-off method for large sizes is different here. You need to refer to the chart and the demonstration of the 6th row from the last of the small size in section 2 and knit. I won't repeat this explanation moving forward. Everyone can just strictly follow the chart for knitting. Continue knitting downwards. After finishing, the remaining loops on the left side will be temporarily left unknitted. These are the loops for piece 2. The first row of piece 1 is now done. Then knit the second row. We will work this row on the wrong side. Purl all stitches without leaving any loops. You can finish it on your own. After completing the second row, move on to the third row. The first stitch in this row is a stitch key of SKP. This is commonly referred to as a SKP. Slide the first loop knitwise. Knit the second loop. Then pick up the previous loop and cover the next loop. That completes one SKP. Next, refer to the chart and finish all the loops on piece 1. This completes the third row. You can now remove the stitch marker. At this point, we can already distinguish between the loops of piece 1 and piece 2. Continue knitting the 4th row. On the wrong side, work the entire 4th row in purl stitches. Complete it on your own. After finishing the 4th row, proceed to knit the 5th row. The technique for this row is identical to the 3rd row. Start with the SKP stitch. Then follow the chart to knit the remaining loops. This completes the 5th row. Continue by turning your work and knitting the 6th row. For the 6th row, work the entire row in purl stitches. Finish it on your own. After completing the 6th row, continue knitting from the 7th to the 50th row. Let's look at the finished product. The small size, in this part, you also need to decrease on the right side, twice in total. The method is the same as the one explained before. After the 2 decreases, work evenly. Refer to the chart and knit up to row 43. Then knit row 44. Starting from row 44, you need to bind off stitches on the left side of the piece to form the neckline. The exact number of stitches to bind off can be found in the chart. The method is demonstrated in section 2. You can finish this part on your own. Pay attention, ladies knitting the large size. You need to keep knitting until row 66. For the rows 7 through 21, you need to bind off or decrease stitches on the right side of the piece. Continue shaping the armhole. After completing, knit evenly until row 59, starting from row 60. Bind off on the left side of the piece to shape the neckline. Refer to the chart for the exact number of stitches to bind off. Refer to the demonstration in section 2 for small sizes. You can complete this part on your own. Ladies knitting the large size, please pay extra attention on the number of stitches and rows on your chart. That may differ from what I demonstrate and explain. Everyone should only refer to my method. I will not repeat this explanation moving forward. After finishing row 50, continue with row 51. Row 51 is worked on the right side. Work evenly. Refer to the chart for knitting. My sample has already completed row 51. Next, let's work on row 52. We will work this row on the wrong side. The first stitch is a stitch key of K2 tog. This is abbreviated as K2 tog. Here, on the wrong side, we need to work in a method of knitting for the purl stitches and purling for the knit stitches. That is, purling 2 stitches together on wrong side. Insert the right needle from right to left through the 2 loops on the left needle. Purl the stitch. This completes the K2 tog purlwise. Work all remaining loops as purl stitches. This completes row 52. Next, let's work on row 53. Row 53 is worked evenly on the right side. Refer to the chart and finish it. Now my sample swatch has completed row 53. Next, we will work on row 54. The first stitch is the K2 tog stitch. On the wrong side, work the K2 tog stitch purlwise. After completion, work all remaining loops as purl stitches. This completes row 54. After completing row 54, proceed to work on row 55 to row 65. You will need to decrease twice on the left side of the piece. The method is identical to what was demonstrated earlier. After the 2 decreases, work evenly. Continue to follow the chart for knitting until you finish the corresponding row numbers. You can complete this part on your own. Now my sample has completed row 65. Next, work on row 66. We will work this row on the wrong side. Begin knitting the short rows to create the shoulder part sloping. Refer to the chart and work purl stitches until the left needle has the corresponding number of loops remaining. The number of loops should refer to your own chart. When you reach the corresponding position, leave the remaining loops unworked and turn the work. Row 66 is now complete. Continue with row 67. Place a stitch marker on the right needle as a mark. This marks the short row point. Now start working the short rows. Here we are using the German short row method. Wrap the yarn tail around to the top of the piece. Slip the first loop on the left needle purlwise. Then, pull the yarn tail tightly at the back. Next, knit across until the end of the row. After finishing the first stitch, you will notice that stitch on the right side has become a slip stitch with a knot. This is the stitch from the short row. Continue. Knit across until the end of this row. That completes row 67. Continue by turning your work and starting row 68. Purl across until you reach the corresponding number of stitches before the stitch marker. Keep in mind that the slip stitch with a knot is a double stitch. When we count the stitches, treat it as one stitch. Don't count it as two. Here, the number of stitches you need to leave is still based on the chart. Once you reach the corresponding position, row 68 is complete. Turn your work and start row 69. Place a stitch marker on the right needle as a marker. Bring the yarn tail to the top of the piece. Slip one loop purlwise. Pull the yarn tail tight to behind. Knit the remaining loops. After knitting one stitch, we can see that there is a double stitch with a knot on the right side of the knit stitch. We always count all double stitches as one stitch. Continue to finish this row. That completes row 69. Up to this point, we have already done 2 short rows. We need to do 2 more short rows next. In total, we will do 4 short rows. On the wrong side rows, purl until you reach the corresponding number of stitches before the stitch marker on the left side. On the right side rows, place the yarn tail above the fabric piece and slip one stitch purlwise. Then tighten the yarn afterward. Continue with knit stitches to finish the row. Everyone, refer to the chart and follow the previous demonstration. Finish rows 70 through 73 accordingly. Now my sample has finished row 73. The row count on the sample is different from the actual project, so you can ignore it. Let's continue with row 74. We will work this row on the wrong side and eliminate the row offset. This entire row is worked in purl stitches. For the double stitch at the short row point, treat it as one stitch. When you encounter the double stitch, simply insert your needle through both stitches at once and work a purl stitch. After completing, remove the stitch marker. Continue working in purl stitches. When you reach the double stitch before the stitch marker, treat it as one stitch. Insert and work a purl stitch. Remove the stitch marker. Repeat this process to finish the row. That completes row 74. After finishing, leave about 10 centimeters of yarn tail and cut off. The loops on the needle. There's no need to bind off. Use another circular needle to place the stitches on hold. Up to this point, the explanation for section 3 piece 1 is complete. Next, we will knit piece 2 of section 3. Locate the previous position where the loop stopped being worked. Join the yarn here. Take the new yarn and wrap it around your right hand. Leave a tail of about 10 centimeters. Insert the left needle into the loop. Hang the yarn tail on the needle. Start knitting directly by following the chart. The yarn tail for joining should be left at the back of the fabric piece. Refer to the chart and continue knitting. Stop when you have one stitch remaining. Once you reach the corresponding position, row 1 is complete. The remaining stitch will be used for binding off in the next row. After finishing row 1, continue with rows 2 through to the 11th to last row. Let's take a look at the finished product. This part is on the left side of piece 2. Continue binding off stitches to form the armhole. Once done, work evenly for the corresponding number of rows. Next, bind off stitches on the right side of the fabric piece. Shape the neckline. After completing the neckline, continue working evenly for the corresponding number of rows. Keep going until the 11th to last row. For this part, refer to the chart and follow the demonstration for piece 1. Once completed, we'll move on to the remaining part together. After finishing the 11th to last row, proceed with the 10th to last row. In this row, we will start working short rows. Knit across until the corresponding number of loops remain. This completes the 10th to last row. Turn your work and start the 9th to last row. Place a stitch marker on the right needle as a mark. Position the yarn tail above the fabric piece. Slip the first loop purlwise. Pull the yarn tail tight from behind. Since the next stitch is a purl, we need to bring the yarn to the top of the fabric piece. Then, begin purling. Continue until you finish this row. This completes the 9th to last row. Turn your work. Start the 8th to last row, knit across until you reach just before the stitch marker, leave the corresponding number of loops remaining. Again, count the double stitch at the short row point as 1 stitch. Once you reach the corresponding position, the 8th to last row is completed. Turn your work and start the 7th to last row. Place a stitch marker on the right needle. Position the yarn tail above the piece. Slip 1 stitch purlwise. Pull the yarn tail tight toward the back. Bring it back to the front of the piece. Continue in purl stitch until the end of the row. This completes the 7th to last row. Continue working the 6th to last row, through the 3rd to last row. These 4 rows require 2 more short rows. On the right side, knit until you reach the corresponding number of loops, before the stitch marker on the left side. On the wrong side, place the yarn tail above the piece. Slip 1 stitch purlwise. Pull the yarn tail tight toward the back. Bring the yarn tail back to the front of the piece. Then work the remaining loops in purl stitch. Refer to the previous demonstration for guidance. Finish these 4 rows as shown. After completing the 3rd to last row, proceed to knit the remaining 2 rows. Knit all stitches in the 2nd to last row. Here we need to eliminate the row offset. When you encounter the double stitch, treat them as 1 stitch and knit it. Remove the stitch marker. Continue knitting. Treat the double stitch position as 1 stitch while knitting. Repeat this process. Finish knitting this row. This completes the 2nd to last row. For the last row, work it on the wrong side and purl all stitches. After completing, leave a tail of about 10 centimeters and cut the yarn. Do not bind off the loops. Together with the loops from piece 1, use the same circular needle to thread them through. Up to this point, this completes the explanation of section 3 of the front piece. Next, let's learn the knitting method for section 4. Section 4 is divided into 2 pieces. You need to remove the provisional cast on. Then thread the loops and knit them separately. Please watch me demonstrate the specific knitting method. Here, we will start by knitting piece 1. Place the cast on edge facing up, with the right side facing you. Piece 1 on the left, piece 2 on the right. Let's start by removing the left side braid. While removing the braid, thread the loops back onto the circular needle. Repeat this process to thread all the loops from this piece back onto the circular needle. After threading, flip it to the right side. Now let's divide it into sections. Here, the fabric piece of section 4. is knitted on this side that close to the middle of the front piece. Check the chart for reference. For piece 1, count the number of stitches needed for row 1. Count the corresponding number of stitches from right to left. Place a stitch marker on the needle to the left of the counted stitches. We will knit on the loops to the right of the stitch marker. Let's start knitting from row 1 to the 5th last row. There are no small patterns to knit in this part. On the corresponding rows of the right side, decrease stitches on both sides. For the rest of the rows, work knit stitches evenly. For the wrong side rows, purl all stitches. Refer to the chart and finish knitting this part on your own. Next, on this fabric piece, we will use the technique of K2 tog on the right side. So far, all our K2 tog have been worked on the wrong side. Here I'll use a sample to demonstrate the method of K2 tog on the right side. First, knit 1 stitch. For the next 2 loops, we will work a K2 tog. Move the right needle to pass through both loops from left to right and knit them together. That's how you complete a K2 tog on the right side. Now knit another stitch. Then let's do it again. Work another K2 tog on the right side. Pass the right needle through both loops from left to right in one motion. Knit the stitch. This is the method for K2 tog on the right side. It's quite simple. When you encounter this stitch technique later, you can refer to this demonstration. Now I've finished knitting the 5th row from the end of swatch. Next, let's knit the 4th row from the end. For these next 2 rows, the knitting methods for the small and large sizes are different. I'll demonstrate the method for the small size first. This row starts with the 2 times 2 ribbing pattern. First, knit 2 stitches. Next, the horizontal stitch key indicates a purl stitch. Bring the yarn to the top of the fabric piece. Purl 2 stitches. Then, for 2 knit stitches, bring the yarn to the bottom of the fabric piece. Knit 2 stitches. After that, bring the yarn up again for 2 purl stitches. Purl 2 stitches. Don't forget to yarn over when alternating between purl and knit stitches. Follow the pattern of 2 knit stitches and 2 purl stitches alternately. Finish this row in this manner. This way, the 4th row from the end is completed. Now let's move on to the 3rd row from the end. This row requires a buttonhole to be reserved. Since this row is worked on the wrong side, using the method we discussed before, the first 2 stitches are marked as knit stitches, so we will purl them. The next stitch is marked as a purl stitch, so we will knit it. The following stitch has a circle stitch key, which indicates a yarn over. After the yarn over, there is 1 SKP, O, stitch. Here we need to work a SKP, O, purlwise. Let's start with the yarn over. Yarn over, bring the yarn upwards the fabric piece, and place it over the right needle. That completes the yarn over. Since we will be working SKP, O, purlwise, we need to continue with another yarn over. Bring the yarn to the top of the fabric piece again. This finishes the preparation for the yarn over. Next, we will work SKP, O, purlwise. Here, we need to swap the positions of the 2 loops first. You can use a cable needle for this step. Using the cable needle, thread through the first loop and hold it in front of the fabric piece. Then bring the second loop onto the right needle. After that, transfer the loop on the cable needle back to the left needle. Now, transfer the loop on the right needle back to the left needle as well. This way, the two loops have successfully swapped positions. Next, knit both loops together in one go. That completes the SKP, purlwise. The hole next to it is the yarn over. Moving on. We will purl one stitch. Once that's done, continue alternating between 2 knit stitches and 2 purl stitches, to knit the corresponding number of stitches. Refer to your own chart for the exact stitch count. Once done, we will move on to knitting the second buttonhole. Start with a K2 tog. Here, we will knit a K2 tog purlwise. Yarn over and bring it up. Knit the corresponding stitch pattern. After completing that, come with a yarn over. The yarn over here does not require wrapping the yarn. At this point, the yarn tail is on top of the fabric piece. After completing the yarn over, you need to knit 2 stitches. We will simply knit the next 2 knit stitches. While knitting these 2 knit stitches, there's no need to bring the yarn tail underneath the fabric piece. That completes 1 yarn over. Next, continue following the pattern of 2 purl stitches and 2 knit stitches. Keep knitting until there are 6 loops left on the needle. When you reach the corresponding position for the next stitch, purl it. After completing it, knit a K2 tog purlwise. Next is a yarn over without wrapping the yarn. Then knit the following stitch. At this point, there will be 2 loops remaining on the needle. Bring the yarn up and purl a stitch. This completes the third to last row. Now I'll use this sample swatch to demonstrate the technique for the fourth to last row, and the third to last row of a larger size. Start by knitting the fourth to last row. Start by knitting 2 stitches. The next 2 are represented by a horizontal line, which means purl stitches. Bring the yarn up and purl the stitch. Then continue with 2 purl stitches, and 2 knit stitches, alternating between them. Keep knitting until there are 3 loops left on the left needle. Don't forget to wrap yarn when alternating between knit and purl stitches. When you reach the corresponding position, knit the next stitch. For the remaining 2 loops, knit them together as a K2 tog. That completes the fourth to last row for the larger size. Now turn your work and start the third to last row. This row requires you to leave buttonholes. Refer to the chart. The first 3 stitches are the stitch keys for 2 knit stitches and 1 purl stitch. Here, we are working on the wrong side. That means working 2 purl stitches, followed by 1 knit stitch. After completing this, come with a yarn over and the stitch key for SKP, stitch. Here, we'll knit the yarn over and the SKP, stitch purlwise, for this yarn over, since we need to purl after completing it. We have to prepare for that. Wrap the yarn around the loop twice, bring it up, and wrap it again while keeping it on the needle. Next, we'll knit the SKP stitch purlwise. Here, we can use a cable needle for assistance. Let's first swap the positions of the next two loops. Insert the cable needle into the first loop and place this loop in front of the fabric piece. Then, insert the right needle into the second loop and slip it off. Return the loop on the cable needle back to the left needle. Also return this loop from the right needle back to the left needle. After completing, insert the right needle into both loops at once. Purl the stitch like this. One yarn over and one SKP stitch purlwise are completed. Next, purl one stitch. Then follow the pattern of 2 knit stitches and 2 purl stitches. Work the corresponding number of stitches. Refer to the chart for the specific stitch count. When you reach the corresponding position, the next step is a yarn over and a SKP stitch purlwise. Here, knit a SKP stitch. The last stitch we just completed was a purl stitch. The yarn tail is now at the top. After finishing the yarn over, you need to knit a stitch. For this yarn over, there's no need to wrap the yarn. Go ahead and knit the next stitch. It's a SKP stitch. After completing it, a yarn over loop naturally appears on the right side. Continue downward, following the pattern of 2 purl stitches and 2 knit stitches. Keep going until there are 6 loops left. When you reach the corresponding position, purl one stitch next. Next is the stitch key for a K2 tog stitch. Here, we will work a K2 tog stitch purlwise. After completing it, there will be one yarn over. Similarly here, the yarn tail is now at the top. After completing the yarn over, you need to knit a stitch. No wrapping yarn is needed. Simply knit the next stitch. The yarn over and this knit stitch are now complete. Continue with 2 purl stitches. The third to last row for the large size is now complete. The remaining 2 rows are worked in the same way as the small size. Please continue to watch my demonstration. Now, let's work the remaining 2 rows. The second to last row is worked on the right side. Using the same method as the fourth to last row, alternate 2 purl stitches with 2 knit stitches. The last 2 stitches are also purl stitches. The final row is worked on the wrong side. Alternate 2 knit stitches with 2 purl stitches to work the row. The last 2 stitches are knit stitches. For these 2 rows, refer to the chart to work them. Now I have completed the final row. Next, we will use the Icelandic bind-off method on the right side to bind off. Begin binding off. Work the first loop as a knit stitch. After completing it, transfer it back to the left needle. Then start binding off. The right needle picks up the second loop. From the first loop on the left needle. Then knit 1 stitch. After completing it, drop 2 loops from the left needle. And transfer the loop on the right needle back to the left needle. Next, pick up an adjacent loop. And continue repeating the previous steps. Pick the second loop from the first loop. And knit 1 stitch. After finishing, drop 2 loops. And place the loop back onto the left needle. Continue repeating the previous steps from the first loop. Pick the second loop and knit 1 stitch. Drop 2 loops. Place the loop back onto the left needle. And continue. Repeat this process until all loops are bound off. After completing, 1 loop will remain. Stretch the loop. Leave about 10 centimeters of yarn tail, then cut it off. Thread the yarn tail through the remaining loop once. This completes the bind off. Up to this point, the method for knitting piece 1 is now complete. After finishing piece 1 of section 4, move on to knit piece 2 of section 4. Piece 2 of section 4 is knitted. On to piece 1 of section 1. Remove the provisional cast on in the same way. Knit near the middle of the front piece side. The technique for threading loops and knitting is identical to that used for piece 1. Just a note. On the third to last row, there's no need to leave buttonholes. Simply follow the chart to knit. After completing section 4, thread the remaining loops from the starting chain with waste yarn. Finish knitting piece 2 on your own. Up to this point, our explanation of section 4 is complete. Our explanation of the front piece is also complete. Next, we will learn how to knit the back piece. Let's take a look at the finished product. The back piece is divided into 2 sections. After casting on for section 1, work evenly. You will need to knit small patterns. Refer to the chart to knit. For section 2, start by binding off stitches on both sides of the fabric piece. This will form the armhole. Then, work evenly for a while. Use short rows to create the sloping shoulder, then divide it into left and right pieces. Construct the neckline. The cast-on method is identical to that of the front piece. Everyone, please complete the part of section 2 of the back piece before the short rows first. After finishing, we will move on to the next parts together. The part of the back piece before the short rows of my sample for the back piece is already done. That means I finished row 70 for the small size. Here, I used different colors for the front and back pieces. You can ignore this. In actual knitting, the entire garment is made in one color. Now let's start knitting row 71. This is where the short rows begin. First, refer to the chart and keep knitting downward. Continue until there are the corresponding number of loops left on the needle. When you reach the corresponding position, row 71 is now complete. Next, turn your work and start row 72. Begin the short rows here. Place a stitch marker on the right needle. Slip the loops. Wrap the yarn and yarn over. Refer to the chart and keep knitting downward. Continue until there are only the corresponding number of loops left on the left needle. When you reach the corresponding position, row 72 is now complete. Turn the work. Start knitting row 73. You need to begin with a short row here. Then follow the chart and knit the corresponding number of stitches. Leave one stitch unknitted here. Use it for binding off in the next row. Refer to the chart for the exact stitch count. When you reach the corresponding position, the first stitch on the left needle will be the stitch that was left unknitted. On the left side of this stitch, place a stitch marker on the needle. Use it to differentiate. The remaining loops on the left side are for the neckline and the left shoulder. That completes row 73. Continue with row 74 through row 80. For this part, you can refer to the demonstration of the front piece. Just follow the chart and complete it. Now, I have completed the right shoulder of the back piece. Take out the front piece and place piece 2 from section 3 of the front piece on top of the back piece, with the right sides of both pieces facing each other. Push the loops to the right side of the needle, and we will bind off the corresponding positions of the two pieces together. Here we use the method of bind off together. Use the yarn tail remaining from knitting the back piece to bind off. Insert the right needle from front to back, through one loop from the front piece and one loop from the back piece. Knit the stitch. After completing it, continue by inserting the needle again through one loop from the front piece and one loop from the back piece. Knit the stitch. Then pick up the previous loop and pull it over. Insert the needle through one loop from both the front and back pieces. Knit the stitch. Continue by picking up the previous loop and pull it over. Repeat this process to bind off all the loops. In the end, there will be one loop remaining. Stretch the loop. Leave about 10 centimeters of yarn tail and cut. Pull the yarn tail through the loop and tighten. This way, the binding off of the right shoulder is complete. Next, we will work on the neckline of the back piece and the left shoulder. Here, I will mainly demonstrate the method for handling the yarn join. Take your right needle and insert it into the right shoulder at the bottom left corner, below the loop where you bind off. Join the new yarn here. The method for joining is the same as before. Leave a yarn tail and pick up the yarn. At this point, you will have one extra loop. Work the next stitch. Knit it. After knitting, pick up the loop where we joined the yarn, covering the loop you just knitted. Pull tight the yarn tail for joining. That's how you complete the joining. Next, we'll start working on the neckline and the left shoulder. Here, we need to bind off the corresponding stitches with short rows. Then continue with the row 73 of left shoulder. In this row, you need to leave a loop before the stitch marker. To make it easier to work the short rows in the next row, the technique for this part is pretty simple. Refer to the previous demonstration. Follow the chart to complete it. After completing the left shoulder, match it with the front piece, binding off at the corresponding positions. The method for binding off is the same as for the right shoulder. You can complete this independently. Up to this point, we have finished explaining the back piece. Next, let's learn the technique for the sleeves. The finished sleeves are 2 in total. Each is divided into 3 sections. Start by knitting section 1. You need to knit small patterns at the corresponding positions. Section 1 needs to be knitted as 2 separate pieces. For section 1 of both sleeves, the only difference is the position for reserving buttonholes. Otherwise, the techniques are identical. After completing piece 1, you need to break the yarn. After completing piece 2, there's no need to break the yarn. Refer to the chart for the number of starting stitches based on different sizes. Let's begin by cast on. Start knitting piece 1. Here we use the method of alternating cable cast on. Make a slip knot with your yarn. Place it onto the circular needle. This is your first stitch. Refer to the chart. The stitch key on the far left of piece 1 indicates a purl stitch. Treat the first starting stitch as a purl stitch. The next stitch key indicates a knit stitch. Insert your needle into this loop knitwise. Work 1 knit stitch. Take the loop you just created, and place it back onto the left needle. This is your second stitch. We have now worked a knit stitch. Continue with a purl stitch next. Insert the needle from back to front between the 2 loops on the needle. Work a purl stitch. Place the loop back onto the left needle. Continue to cast on the 4th stitch. Cast on a knit stitch. Insert your needle between the 2 loops on the needle. Pick up the stitch knitwise. Place it onto the left needle. Repeat this process until you reach the corresponding number of stitches. This completes the casting on. The method for the remaining part is relatively simple. Just refer to the chart and follow the pattern. Pay attention to piece 2 when casting on. The first stitch should be a knit stitch. When starting the second stitch, insert purlwise and work a purl stitch into the first loop. The rest of the method to pick up the loop is identical. For purl stitches, cast on purlwise. This is the casting on method for section 1. Whether it's piece 1 or piece 2, just refer to the chart and follow the pattern. The positions for the buttonholes on the left sleeve and right sleeve are different. Make sure to strictly follow your own chart while knitting. Up to this point, the knit technique for section 1 is complete. After completing section 1, continue with section 2. For the left and right sleeves, aside from the different positions for the reserved buttonholes in section 1, the knit methods for section 2 and section 3 are identical. For section 2, refer to the chart and continue knitting upwards at the corresponding row numbers on both sides. Increase stitches. The method for increasing stitches has been demonstrated before in the front piece. In the first row of section 2, you need to knit piece 1 with piece 2 together. Similar to section 2 of the front piece, start by knitting piece 2, then knit piece 1. After completing piece 2, there's no need to increase stitches. Simply continue knitting the loops on piece 1. For the remaining part, refer to the chart and continue knitting upwards. After completing section 2, continue knitting upwards for section 3. In this part, you'll need to decrease stitches and bind off on both sides of the fabric. Construct the sleeve cap. The technique used for the sleeve cap has been demonstrated before. Just refer to the chart and finish it on your own. Up to this point, the demonstration of sleeve knitting is completed.